The latency stage is they've gone through this huge thing with mom and dad. Fell in love with mom, wanted to kill my father, dad was going to castrate me, fell out of love with mom, out of the sex business. And its sex is repressed until you get to the genital stage. And the genital stage is the stage we are all in, the healthy adult stage. Now that you're adults and you've gone through all the developmental stages, where do you stand? You're not out of the woods yet. Because unconscious mechanisms are still, even if you haven't got fixated or anything, there's still this dynamic going on all the time with your id, your ego, and your superego. And the idea is your superego, remember your superego is stupid. So your superego isn't only telling you not to do bad things, it's telling you not to think bad things. So what's happening is your id is sending up all of this weird, sick stuff, all of these crazy sexual and violent desires. Oh, I'll kill him. I'll have sex with that. I'll have extra helpings on my dessert. And your superego say, no, no, no. And this stuff is repressed. It doesn't even make it to consciousness. The problem is Freud had a very sort of hydraulic theory of what goes on. And some of this stuff slips out. And it shows up in dreams, and it shows up in slips of the tongue, and in exceptional cases it shows up in certain clinical symptoms. So what happens is, Freud described a lot of normal life as in terms of different ways we use to keep that horrible stuff from the id making its way to consciousness. And he called these defense mechanisms. You're defending yourself against the horrible parts of yourself. And some of these make a little bit of sense. I mean, one way to describe this in a non-technical, non-Freudian way is there's certain things about ourselves we'd rather not know. There's certain desires we'd rather not know, and we have ways to hide them. So for instance, there's sublimation. Sublimation is you might have a lot of energy, maybe sexual energy or aggressive energy, but instead of turning it to a sexual or aggressive target, what you do is you focus it in some other way. So you can imagine a great artist like Picasso turning the sexual energy into his artwork. There's displacement. Displacement is you have certain shameful thoughts or desires and you refocus them more appropriately. A boy who's bullied by his father may hate his father and want to hurt him. But since this is very shameful and difficult, the boy might instead kick the dog and think he hates the dog, because that's a more acceptable target. There's projection. Projection is, I have certain impulses I'm uncomfortable with. So rather than own them myself, I project them to somebody else. A classic example for Freud is homosexual desires. The idea is that I feel this tremendous lust towards you, for instance, and any of you, all of you, you three. And I'm ashamed of this lust. So what I say is, hey, are you guys looking at me in a sexual manner? Are you lusting after me? How disgusting. Because what I do is I take my own desires and I project it to others. And Freud suggested, perhaps not implausibly, that men who believe other men, who are obsessed with the sexuality of other men, are themselves projecting away their own sexual desires. There's rationalization, which is that when you do something or think something bad, you rationalize it and you give it a more socially acceptable explanation. A parent who enjoys smacking his child will typically not say, I enjoy smacking my child, rather will say, it's for the child's own good. I'm being a good parent by doing this. And finally, there is regression, which is returning to an earlier stage of development. And you actually see this in children. In times of stress and trauma, they'll become younger. They will act younger. They might cry, they might suck their thumb, seek out a blanket, or so on. Now, these are all mechanisms that for Freud are not the slightest bit pathological. They're part of normal life. Normally we do these things to keep an equilibrium among the different systems of the unconscious. But sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes things go awry. And what happens is a phrase that's not currently used in psychology, but was popular during Freud's time, hysteria. Hysteria includes phenomena like hysterical blindness and hysterical deafness, which is when you cannot see and cannot hear, even though there's nothing physiologically wrong with you. Paralysis, trembling, panic attacks, gaps of memory, including amnesia, and so on. And the idea is that these are actually symptoms. These are symptoms of mechanisms going on to keep things unconscious. It's a common enough idea in movies. Often in movies what happens is somebody goes to an analyst. They have some horrible problem. They can't remember something. Or they have some sort of blackouts and so on. And the analyst tells them something. And at one point, they get this insight. And they realize why they blinded themselves. Why they can't remember. And for Freud, this is what happens. Freud originally attempted to get these memories out through hypnosis, but then moved to the mechanism of free association. And according to Freud, the idea is patients offer resistance to this, and then the idea of a psychoanalyst is to get over the resistance and help patients get insight. The key notion of psychoanalysis is your problems are actually reflect deeper phenomena. You're hiding something from yourself. And once you know what's going on with deeper phenomena, your problems will go away. I'm going to give you an example of a therapy session. Now, this is not a Freudian analysis. We'll discuss later on in the course what a Freudian analysis is, but this is not a pure Freudian analysis. A Freudian analysis, a person is lying on a couch, does not see their therapist is very non-directive. But I'm going to present this as an example here because it illustrates so many of the Freudian themes, particularly themes about dreams, the importance of dreams, about repression, and about hidden meaning. So this is from a television episode. And the characters, some of you may have seen this, many of you will not have. The character is suffering from panic attacks. In particular, he has panic attacks when he sees, his first panic attack originated when he walked to a swimming pool and he saw a family of ducks fly away. And he had a panic attack. High heart pounding, sweating, flushed, and then he passed out. And these panic attacks grew worse and worse until he saw a therapist who ended up prescribing him medication. And this is discussed as one of the meetings he had with the therapist. Freud's contributions extend beyond the study of individual psychology and individual pathology. Freud had a lot to say about dreams, as you could see in this illustration. He believed that dreams had a manifest content, meaning what you experience in your dream. But dreams always had a latent content as well, meaning the hidden implication of the dream. He viewed all dreams as wish fulfillment. Every dream you have is a certain wish you have, even though it might be a forbidden wish that you wouldn't wish to have, you wouldn't want to have. And dreams had, and this is an idea that long predated Freud, dreams had symbolism. Things in dreams were often not what they seemed to be, but rather symbols for other things. Freud believed that literature and fairy tales and stories to children and the like carried certain universal themes, certain aspects of unconscious struggles, and certain preoccupations of our unconscious mind. And Freud had a lot to say about religion. For instance, he viewed a large part of of the idea of finding a singular, all-powerful God as seeking out a father figure that some of us never had during development. What I want to spend the rest of the class on is the scientific assessment of Freud. So what I did was, so far as I've told you what Freud had to say in broad outline, I then want to take the time to consider whether or not we should believe this and how well it fits with our modern science. But before doing so, I'll take questions for a few minutes. Do people have any questions about about Freud or Freud's theories.